We are now recording. Good morning, Sarah. For those attendees that have just joined us, just to make you aware that we will be starting at past, so just a couple of minutes just to allow a few other people to join. Again, good morning to those of you that have just joined. We're just going to wait just a couple of seconds just before I start the webinar off today, just to allow a couple of other people to join. Okay, the time is now 11:30, so I'm going to begin the webinar. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Managing Poor Performance Practical Strategies online webinar provided by the Curve Group. We are delighted to have you along with us this morning. Please do feel free to participate. If you have got any distractions or mobiles around you, then please pop them on mute. We have automatically muted your mic, but we really do want you to get involved and participate. So if you have got any questions, we've got a Q&A session at the end. And in addition to that, we have got the opportunity for you just to raise your hands and pop any questions in the chat facility as well. Estimated time of the webinar today will be around 30 minutes, and that again includes questions and answers, but we're happy to go on longer if you've got more questions for us. Let me start by just introducing myself. My name's Anna Clapton. I'm the head of HR consultancy here at the Curve Group, and we'll just be taking us through the webinar today. In addition to that, just to make you aware, the session has been recorded for future reference, and a copy of the webinar link recording will be sent out to you for reference as well. So for those of you who don't know very much about us, let me tell you a little bit. So we are the Curve Group. We are the largest privately owned recruitment and HR outsource in the UK. We provide lots of configurable solutions across the entire employee life cycle, just as this wheel shows here. Our solutions can be configured to support businesses of all shapes and sizes, from startups to SMEs and challenger brands, right through to FTSE 250 businesses. As well as being fully embedded into a business, our solutions can also offer a wraparound service really and complement existing teams and functions, providing additional expertise and scalability as and when you need it most. And as you can see by the pictorial here, we cover all of that employee life cycle, as I said, from workforce planning through to induction, employee relations and advice, change and exit management. We're really proud of what we do and what we deliver. And this is just a small selection of our awards and industry recognition that we've received over the past years. So what I'd love to do now is introduce you to both Caroline Harper, who's our Head of Employee Relations, and Laura Burden, who's one of our Employee Relations Advisors. And Caroline and Laura will take you through today's session. Caroline, over to you.
Thanks, Anna. So what's coming up today? So what is a capability concern? So how you identify that? How to embed performance measurement? Skill versus will, so what falls under performance and what falls under conduct, the performance management process, so some informal and formal stages, disability and what reasonable adjustments you may be required to consider, the legal risks if you don't follow a procedure, some confidentiality, training for line managers, and a question and answer session at the end. So I'm just going to pass you over to Laura.
So first of all, how do we define a capability concern? So a capability concern is where an employee is not fit for the role, and this is through no real fault of their own. Capability concerns can relate to either underperformance or to sickness. Now, during today's session, we're going to be focusing on underperformance, and this is a type of capability issue. We're going to come on to this in more detail, but just to summarise at the start, a performance issue is something which relates to the employee's skill, aptitudes or competencies and their ability to apply these effectively to their job role. So we wanted to start by giving some consideration to how you measure performance in your workplace at the moment. So first of all, we want you to have a think about how you currently measure what good looks like. So what is expected of employees and how is this measured? So for example, do you have productivity targets, KPIs or performance ratings? Consider if this is working well, or if you can think of anything which could be added or improved to help you measure this effectively going forwards. If you haven't already, a really good place to start here is developing KPIs related to your job descriptions. So a job description review also is a good starting point. The next thing to look at is how what good looks like is communicated and made clear to your team. So are there set targets or processes to be followed? One of the most common issues we see when managing performance is complaints of poor communication. So it's really good to take some time just to review how this is currently done within your business. Is there regular performance management via appraisals and feedback given via one-to-ones? So again, we've seen in quite a few, particularly in performance dismissal cases, employees bringing forwards appraisals where they've scored very highly. So it's just as important to make sure you're open and honest within appraisal meetings and one-to-ones, as these could potentially damage your case in a dismissal scenario. Remember, it's important to ensure employees have the tools to succeed. And by this, we mean everything that they need to get their job done. If this isn't the case, it will make it quite difficult for you to identify and manage underperformance. So this includes ensuring your team members have received full induction training on any systems they use and the information they need on any internal processes as well. So moving on to the root causes of poor performance. Before you can move forwards with managing poor performance, you need to identify the root causes. So again, here's some things for you to consider. So have there been any recent changes at work, such as a new system or changes to processes? And if so, has the relevant training been provided and is the employee fully aware and comfortable with this? Have there been any workload changes? So things to consider here are if you're short-staffed, if there's been an increase in the volume of work, which the employee may be struggling with. Are they motivated to do the job? So is your employee engaged, or are they facing any barriers in their role which could be causing them to feel less motivated? Another thing to be mindful of is if there's any non-work related issues, there could be something going on with the individual's home life, health or personal life, which is causing them to lose focus or to struggle to do their job. Now, hopefully you'll know your employees well, and you should be able to identify if something seems unusual or out of character, particularly where there hasn't been a performance issue previously. So it's crucial that you discuss your concerns early with the employee and look to identify what is causing the poor performance before you can move any further. So a key part at the beginning of the process is to identify if the issue is capability, so performance related. We refer to this as skill, or if it's related to conduct, which we refer to as will. We're going to have a quick look at each of these now. So skill, first of all. With a skill or a capability performance issue, the individual's underperformance isn't deliberate. It's due to a lack of skills, knowledge, or support in a certain area. And this means they're likely to need some additional help to reach the required standard. So for example, it could be that they need some coaching or some additional training in a certain area of their role. Where the issue is capability related, performance management would be appropriate. Looking at will now, so will problems are often deliberate or careless, and these are going to be displayed through the individual's behaviour. This would be a misconduct issue. With a will or conduct issue, the employee will have the skill to complete their work to the required standard, but knowingly or negligently chooses not to. Some examples of this are lateness, poor attitude, and failure to follow instructions. You should be able to show that you have fully considered the facts and acted fairly in opting to follow the conduct or capability procedure. This distinction could be critical in the event of an unfair dismissal claim. You should be able to show that you fully considered the facts and acted fairly in opting to follow the conduct or capability procedure. Now, as you know, today we're focusing on poor performance. So once we've identified that the issue is skill, so performance or capability, rather than a will issue, you're going to need to address this using your internal performance procedure. Caroline is going to provide you with some details to help you with this now.
Thank you. So even if it's not in your policies, the ACAS guidelines and case law make it clear that employees need to be given a reasonable opportunity to improve their performance. And in order to show and indeed give reasonable opportunity to improve, we would recommend trying to address this informally in the first instance. And of course, it is important that it's done early on. Having said that, about the informal process, it should still be documented. So this could be done via an email covering the points off of the meeting that you've had, or ideally we'd suggest implementing the use of a PIP, an performance improvement plan. So you can use a number of different forms for that, but it just makes sure everything's documented. So to have that meeting first, you'd have an informal meeting with your team member to discuss their underperformance. And remember to bring the facts with you to the meeting while still showing compassion and concern. So during the meeting, mutually agree the objectives, and for this we recommend using the PIP document. So you would ask questions like, you know, this is the objective. Do you agree that this is achievable? What do you need to achieve it by? So in that document, is it important that you have clarified the expected standards, identified the areas of concern, established the likely causes of the unacceptable performance, identified any training or solutions that may be needed, set any targets for improvement, and agreed a timescale for frequent reviews. Next slide, please, Anna. So hopefully you'll all be familiar with this acronym. So looking at SMART objectives, and when we talk about that, what do we mean? So it's the acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So just looking at the screen here, so specific, refer to the specific task or action which needs to be achieved. And in our day-to-day work, we see plenty of these sort of documents or emails where it really isn't clear what a manager is asking the employee to improve on. Make sure it's measurable. So how will you know that the objective has been achieved? Can metrics data be used? And if not, how will you measure progress? So you might have something, or we work sometimes with call centre environments, things like that, 70% of their calls, an error rate and things like that. So make sure that you can measure it. So achievable, can the objective be achieved and with the support provided? And it's important, as I've said, that the employee agrees with that. So relevant, is it relevant to what the company and or the team needs to achieve more broadly? So what we're asking them to achieve is aligned to their job role and what the team do. So the job descriptions come in handy there. And time bound, so it's important that these objectives have the target date or a time frame for when they should be completed. So performance do's and don'ts, and as I've said, we've seen quite a lot of these objectives and quite a lot of these documents that do appear unusable. So do ensure that the objectives are SMART, remain consistent, include details and facts, and give the employee opportunities to respond. So stick to agreed frequency for reviews. So if you agree a time frame, make sure that you do meet with them at that time to assess their performance again. So be open and honest, gain the employee's agreement and document any feedback. So don't cancel any follow-ups or reviews because there are no longer any concerns. Don't forget to get the employee sign off, and don't leave the PIP document open to interpretation. So remember this, you know, may be a precursor to a dismissal, which will be the formal stages. And all these documents, you should imagine that they may be before an employment tribunal judge or some other solicitor or body. So don't include any surprises. Don't wait until the review to mention areas which need improving, and don't rush the process. So moving on to the formal stages, if after trying to deal with the underperformance informally, there is not improvement, and the formal procedure will then need to be followed, which ultimately could lead to dismissal. So internal procedures, and many of you will probably have your policies, usually mean there will be a requirement for you to have a number of meetings where the performance plan or the objectives are reviewed with the employee, and any feedback on areas of improvements are provided, as well as setting out what is still a concern. And this could result in relevant warnings and ultimately dismissal at the end of the process. So you can see here on the slides that the employee must be formally invited to these meetings, and they do have a right to bring a companion, which is a colleague or a trade union representatives. They have the right to appeal after any stage, including the dismissal. And remember, HR's role is to provide support and advice and guidance. So if any of you are familiar with the Ramphal case, which really clarifies what HR's role is in the process. So the Equality Act. So a person is disabled if they have a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. Now, only an employment tribunal will determine whether an employee is classed as disabled within the meaning of the Equality Act or not. However, we usually err on the side of caution here because of the requirements of the employer to make reasonable adjustments. So we would say if somebody has an underlying health condition, so if they have, constantly, that they've got an underlying health concern, it crops up in return to work meetings, or it's mentioned in the PIP document, I would err on the side of caution and certainly treat them as if they are defined as disabled under the Equality Act. So what does it mean for us when we're managing performance? Well, why does it matter? So employers must make reasonable adjustments, or they must consider reasonable adjustments to make sure workers with disabilities, which are physical or have mental health concerns, are not substantially disadvantaged when doing their jobs. So over to you, Laura.
Yeah, so we've mentioned the term reasonable adjustments there. So what is a reasonable adjustment? Simply put, a reasonable adjustment is any change made to the working environment by the employer to prevent a disabled person suffering a substantial disadvantage compared with people who are not disabled. Now, this can include both mental and physical disabilities. Now, when it comes to making reasonable adjustments, as an employer, you need to consider what can be reasonably done to reduce, or in an ideal case, remove the disadvantage for the person with the disability. Now, there's a number of different adjustments which you could consider dependent on the circumstances. This could include modified or specialist equipment. For example, a desk chair designed for somebody with back problems, or perhaps text-to-speech software, providing an interpreter, flexible working or adjusted hours, alterations to the workplace. So for example, a ramp for wheelchair access, additional training, or it could be something as simple as time off to attend medical appointments. Now, what is reasonable will depend on each situation. And there's a number of things as an employer you're going to need to consider carefully before making the adjustments. So you need to consider if it will remove or reduce the disadvantage for the person with the disability, if it's practical to make, if it's affordable by the employer or by the business, and if it could harm the health and safety of others. Now, looking at occupational health now. Sorry, if we could just go back a slide. Oh, thank you. So where there is a disability which is preventing the employee from meeting the required standards, occupational health can help to give an expert medical opinion on the employee's condition, how this is likely to affect them at work, and they'll also be able to confirm if the employee is fit to work. They'll be able to provide suggestions on adjustments, which will support them in their work. And this is something which you can give consideration to when managing an employee's capability to perform in their role. Just remember, occupational health won't help you to decide what adjustments are reasonable to your business. And the report is going to be as good as the questions you ask. So you need to be clear on the purpose for the referral. It also doesn't replace the need to have conversations with employees, and this is something which does still need to be completed by their line manager. Back over to you, Caroline.
Thank you. So what are the legal risks? What happens when it all goes wrong? So potentially the employee, if they have 2 years service, could have an unfair dismissal claim. So the basic award is the same as a statutory redundancy package. Compensatory award is a loss of earnings up until a new job is found, and the claimant must prove that they're searching for work, trying to mitigate their loss. If a fair process isn't followed, there could be a 25% uplift for that. There is a cap, which is 52 weeks gross salary or £86,444, whichever is the lower, so still quite a lot of money. An injury to feelings occurs, so obviously you know that they can claim for discrimination claim without even being an employee. And this is governed by the Vento case still. So there's a lower, middle and upper band for that. And I do believe that the failure to make reasonable adjustments, disability discrimination under the Equality Act is the highest awards that are given, and the most cases is the failure to make reasonable adjustments. So it is really quite an important area. And they would go, whether something fits into the lower, middle or upper band will depend on, how long it went on. So whether you made any considerations, whether you made any adjustments, how long you rejected these for. So the lower band is between £900 to £9,000, middle band 9,000 to 27,000, and the upper band £27,000 to £45,000, and most exceptional cases can be exceeding that. This is without even mentioning, I don't know if any of you had tribunal claims against you, but even defending a claim, I would say you wouldn't get much change out of £20,000. I think we've got one slide before that, Anna. I think they're just hopping on a bit quick. So confidentiality, as always, it's important. And when discussing somebody's health, which is often the case with discussing underperformance, remember it will be classed as sensitive data under GDPR. So remember, performance matters must be dealt with sensitively and with due respect for the privacy of the individuals involved. The discussions are confidential. The employees may choose to discuss these things with their colleagues, but that's fine as long as you don't. And no electronic recordings of the meetings or hearings to be conducted unless all parties agree that you can do prior to the hearing commencing. Okay, so training for line managers. Now, making sure that you've got competent line managers with an awareness to challenge underperformance and that they make sure they have the skills to do it are really key to effective management of underperformance. It is crucial that they handle conversations around performance, and this is one of the key skills that they need to develop. And I'm sure that many of you will have had, we often get people, they've passed people's probations because they don't feel able to not. And then all of a sudden they've got performance management issues, which, should really have been dealt with during that probationary period. So performance management is a focus in your business training for line managers. And one of the first steps I really think that you should be considering. So at the Curve Group, we're quite used to doing that. So we did bespoke this to your clients. So the company approach management poor performance. So this can be tailored to your business needs, company policies and procedures. And then we discuss skill and will and how to recognise the difference between capability and conduct. And the managers get quite involved in that. We have a number of scenarios. So the capability process, again, this will be bespoke to your company. Discussing disability, reasonable adjustments, what is reasonable, what isn't, the Equality Act, legal risk and confidentiality. And we also include, if you do training managers, recommend to include some case studies and activities to ensure that it's as interactive as possible and the line managers have actually learned something. So if you're interested in any of that, please do get in touch.
Lovely, thank you very much. So that brings us to the close of the session today and an opportunity for you to ask any questions really to either Caroline or Laura. Now there's a number of ways that you can do this. You can pop it into the chat facility or the Q&A facility on your toolbar, or alternatively, you can just raise your hand and we can open up the mic. Now, if you'd rather contact them individually and do it that way and ask any questions, then their details are on the screen now and they would be more than happy to help you. So I'll just give it a couple of seconds just to see if anyone's got any questions and anything comes up. Can't see any questions coming up at the moment. So as I say, please do use the experts. They are here to help guide and support you. So if you do need to reach out to them, then please do so. So Obviously, a helping hand, this is what we are here to do. We are here to provide ad hoc project-based or longer term expertise to resolve any performance management issues, just as Caroline said. We can review your existing performance management policies and processes to ensure compliance with employment law or create these for you. And again, we can design and deliver tailored run training for your line managers as well. I've just noticed that we've got a question coming in. So before I move on to the next slide, I'm just going to open that up now. So this question, I'll read it out for you, Caroline and Laura, just in case you can't see it. If the employee chooses to discuss their case with peer group, can you challenge what they have said?
I can see that's from David. Have you had a specific issue with this? Because I'm just wondering if whether it's because they've discussed it with their peer group, they've discussed something that you don't believe is accurate.
David, your mic is open if you want to talk.
Or please do feel free to speak to me later if it's a specific query that you want to discuss in private. But I'm just, you know, if something that they've said and it isn't accurate, then I would personally discuss it with them in private, yes, and raise it with them to say that, you know, this is what's come back to you, you're concerned because it's not true, and just say that it's been disruptive, and that if it continues to be the case, I would look at a conduct issue then.
Okay, David's come back and said your guess is correct, Caroline.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
David, please feel free to contact Caroline outside of today's session. I'm sure she'll be happy to support you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't see any other questions coming in at the moment. So we will just move forward and just prior to us concluding, we are running our next webinar on the 20th of July. This is all around creating your own emerging talent and future leaders and strategies. And the webinar series will continue then in September after the summer break. So we're basically just doing one before the 6 weeks holidays with all of the school breakups, etc. And then we'll conclude our webinars again in September. All of our previous webinars are saved down onto our website. And as I say, the link to today's webinar will be sent across to you so that you've got that recording as well. All that's left for me to say on behalf of Caroline, Laura and myself is thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you with us this morning, and please do reach out to Caroline and Laura if they can be of any further assistance to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.